Please don't be the Packers. Please don't be the Packers. Please don't be the Packers. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, a podcast where you don't tell you Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. It's that time of year. Time to talk about the terrible teams, Grossi, and today we are going to be ranking in what I think will be the 5 worst teams heading into the 2023-2024 NFL season. We got through free agency, we got through the draft, and now it's time to explain who's going to be bad. So let's start off with what I think is going to be the 5th worst team in the league. And this was a bit tough because, for example, I had the Bears right around this list last year. I didn't think they'd be the worst team, but they overachieved. Let's hope you do the same exact thing this year too, in being bad, not in being good. I want to make that very, very clear. But it's always tough to tell because there are teams that historically have been bad and they take a while to get going. But after the draft, there's kind of some room for optimism. So for example, the Indianapolis Colts, I was going to have them on this list. But I think their big if piece is not Anthony Richardson. It's instead Jonathan Taylor. Of course, that offensive line is not as good as it was, but if Jonathan Taylor can return to form, they can win games, and I don't think they'll be one of the worst teams in the league. However, if Jonathan Taylor doesn't return to form, and Anthony Richardson, whenever he winds up starting, isn't good, they will find themselves on this list. But because you have that big what-if factor with Jonathan Taylor, instead, at number 5, it is going to be another AFC South team. You might start to see a little bit of a pattern here. But at number 5, it is the Houston Texans. Now, the Texans, I think, will be an improved team this year. No doubt about it. They swung big in the draft, not only getting their franchise QB, or what they hope to be their franchise QB, in CJ Stroud. They also traded right back up and got Will Anderson. And it seems like they're just trying to make some drastic changes to kind of put like a little bit of a spark back into this franchise. Now, I like what they've done in the offseason, besides trade away Brandon Cooks, but I understood he didn't want to be there, but you are losing a weapon there. But DeMeco Ryans, I think, is a great hire. I think he's the guy for that job. Of course, you do have to look at ownership, but with Easterby no longer being there, that should definitely help things. The Texans were pretty competitive in a bunch of games last year. They found a good running back in Pierce, which I really like. Stingley was really good last year. So they have some pieces that are there. Of course, they got Laramie Tunsil, who they have now extended. He's going to be their premier left tackle. So he's going to protect whoever's going to throw the ball, whether it's going to be Mills starting out or if CJ Stroud just gets thrown right into the fire. I think there's going to be some learning curves along the way. There's definitely going to be some speed bumps, but I think the Texans should be a better, more well-rounded team this season. Now, does that mean that they're going to make the playoffs? I don't think so, but I do think that they have the personnel to be better than they were last year. I don't think they'll be the worst team in the league, but with all that being said, I still think they're going to struggle a bit, and so because of that, they find themselves at the end of this list. Then the 4th worst team, another AFC South one, you got the Tennessee Titans. And I know this might be a little bit of a spicy take, but for me, I just don't see the Titans doing very well this year. Ryan Tannehill on the final year of his contract, and it doesn't seem like anybody wants him there. They still have a lack of weapons on the offense. A healthy Derrick Henry will be good for that team. They can win football games with that, though there are some questions about their offensive line. I do like that they went offensive tackle, though he's more of a guard, in the draft because they definitely needed to address it. Their defensive line is still going to be good. Of course, Big Jeff getting that big extension. But I think there's just a lot of turmoil with this team. You have 3 QBs. I don't know who QB1 is going to be. They're going to battle it out in camp, and I'm not really impressed with any of them right now. I think that team is a little bit directionless right this second. I like Mike Vrabel a lot, and again, they're in a bad division, so they should be able to win some games, but that monumental collapse that they had last year, I think affects the team. And I think going forward, this is not the year for them to be all in or they're going to be making playoff runs. Instead, I think they're going to just try to figure out who the hell are we? What is our future going to be? We're going to be moving on likely from our franchise running back and Ryan Tannehill next season. And so I can see a lot of turmoil this year, and I don't think that's going to reflect very well on their record. Then number 3, I got the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, they're a weird team. They're an interesting one in which they seem like they are going to be rocking with Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett. They seem to believe in Howell, and I love that. Give the kid an opportunity. He played a little bit last year, and there was definitely some, hey, maybe he could play. So I like that. They, of course, have Scary Terry. They have a good run game. Their offensive line does give me some pause. I'm not really sold on the Forbes pick with their first overall pick in the draft, but their defense, there's some question marks there. Chase Young, they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. You do have to worry about the pass rush a little bit. And if Chase Young can get back to what they want him to be, the kind of prospect that was supposed to be this fantastic player coming out of college, there's some question marks on the defense. And they have like a decent trio of wide receivers. You have Scary Terry, you have Curtis Samuel, and you have Dotson. And so I think that whoever the quarterback is going to be has some weapons to play with. I think that there's some question marks about Ron Rivera and how long he's going to be tenured there. Obviously, you're going to have new ownership, which I think is a huge step forward, and that's the most important thing. But in a pretty darn good division in the NFC East, the Commanders seem to be the odd team out, and I don't think that's going to get much better, though the NFC as a whole is not very competitive this year. I just see the Commanders being one of those meh teams this year, and so they are number 3 on this list. Number 2, you got another NFC team, and that is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're another one in a weird transitional phase in which their quarterback is Baker Mayfield, or they'll be rocking with Kyle Trask. You have Devin White, who doesn't want to play for them anymore. Godwin, Mike Evans getting a little bit older, and it just seems that they are going to wind up doing a full rebuild and a full reset. But to the Buccaneers fans' delight, they got their ring. So at the end of the day, they're kind of like the Rams. They're good with it. They can go a few years of sucking. I think they're not going to be great this year. Their defense should be solid. I like the pickup of Kancey, should definitely help. But I think overall, even though they're in a little bit of a weaker division and conference, I don't see the Buccaneers winning a ton of games this year, potentially setting them up to draft their next franchise QB if Baker Mayfield is not their guy. But yeah, Bucks, you had your time in the sun. Now it's time to be a little sad again. And number 1, I don't think there's going to be too many arguments here. You got the Arizona Cardinals. In my opinion, will be the worst team this year, and there's a lot of reasons. Obviously, they have a new regime, though I'm not really sold on Gannon in any way, shape, or form because, well, I mean, you've seen the clips. But Kyler Murray is going to be missing a substantial part of the season. DeAndre Hopkins, who knows if he is going to wind up getting moved. Even if he doesn't, I don't have a lot of faith in that offense. The offensive line needs to get built up. The defense, they definitely have some big swings and misses on the defensive side of the ball. Isaiah Simmons definitely being one of them. Then they're just another team. They had a few guys leave. J.J. Watt obviously retired. And their direction is kind of weird. I think this is going to be an evaluation season for them because the new regime, when Kyler Murray gets back, is going to look at him and say, are you our guy or not? I like them being aggressive and planning for next season already. They went and got the top offensive tackle in the draft. I like all of those moves. I just think they're not going to be a good football team. The 49ers and the Seahawks, they should be the ones who are going to run that division. The Rams, who I contemplated putting on this list, I think they'll be better if Matthew Stafford comes back and is a little bit healthier. But right now, for me, the Cardinals are the bottom of the barrel, and they may be the first overall pick next year. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Who do you think is going to be the worst team this year? Listen, the Packers definitely could be on this list. And if it's the defense's fault, Joe Barry better get fired. But let me know. Before we get out of here, I want to do a big shout and thank you to some brand new Patreon and YouTube members. Over on the Patreon side of things, we have Dan and Mike. And on the YouTube side of things, joining the Grossi Posse Plus, we have Davey Crockett. A big shout out and thank you to you both. But you can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy at all social media. See down below. Check out Patcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.